Damian Farrell with his Damian on Design right now. He is a local architect, and something that really is going to resonate with you and your fellow architects is what's going on with the City of Ann Arbor's Downtown Zoning Evaluation Project. Public evaluation of the downtown zoning amendments adopted in 2009 as part of the Ann Arbor Discovering Downtown, that's A2D2 initiative, which began a while back. And they've been having these interviews and focus groups and public events and community coffees and online activity to ascertain what we want our downtown to be like. And it's all coming to a head fairly soon here, right?
Well, it came to a head.
It did.
It came to a head a few years ago, and
Well,
we thought we were okay.
Okay.
We thought we had a zoning
You know what?
ordinance.
You bring up a good point, and let's give Wendy Rampson, who's the planning manager for the City of Ann Arbor, give us a little history.
Sure.
About this. I mentioned A2D2, and every time I say those words, I think back to I think it was still a hotel where the senior housing is now at the corner of Huron.
Courthouse Square.
Courthouse Square. Used to be a hotel, and this event, I believe, was hosted in that hotel. We got together, and we were...
There were many events.
Well, yes, but I remember...
Over many years.
I remember these little...
with many people. Over a long period of time.
These
squares of
these
colors.
little squares of colors that we were supposed to put on, I don't know,
Right.
to determine what we want downtown to look like. That was 19...
That was probably, no, that was probably 2005.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was probably
That doesn't
2005.
sound that long ago.
And then that was part of the
It was 2005,
Calthorpe
yes.
and Associates was hired to help the community identify a vision for the downtown that included density and included residential.
And so what did we come up with?
We came up with what we call zoning regulations. They're very boring, but still very important regulations that say what a property owner can do on their property. And those were approved in 2009, and as Damian referenced, there was a lot of public engagement in that process on both the design side and the zoning side. What the project is right now is taking a look at those changes and seeing if they're netting what we had hoped to. If the regulations are resulting in development that the community thinks is an asset. And so it's really actually not rethinking all of that, it's tweaking it. It's trying to refine the regulations so that as we move forward, we get more of what we want to see.
We're now playing with shorter blocks of color.
Yeah.
I know, I'm being a little cynical about it. I'm putting my dear friend Wendy on the hot spot here, and that's not the intention of the show at all.
Is this why the building at Huron and Division is going to get built? Because we had these regulations in place, and council said if we don't allow this, we could be sued. Is that correct?
I wouldn't go that far. The community didn't like, or at least what we heard from the community and from council is they didn't like the result of the 413 East Huron project. And primarily because we have what I would call hard edges in the downtown. Our downtown is very compact. We've made a commitment not to expand it like some communities that have a growing downtown. They kind of bleed out into residential areas and take over that area. We've had a commitment since the 80s of not doing that. Our zoning ends at these neighborhoods. What that means, however, is there are some properties where you can do some dense development that are right cheek to jowl with residential neighborhoods, and that's what happened with the 413 East Huron project. And so the scale of that building in proximity to the Old Fourth Ward is really what people were concerned about.
Why didn't we realize this?
We did, and you know there was a very robust public debate about that. If you look down Huron, the character of Huron right now is pretty monumental. You have big buildings, and the university has since added North Quad. So the sense was on Huron there should be larger buildings.
Right.
And the zoning was structured to keep the buildings pushed towards the street with a larger setback from the neighborhood.
Okay.
What probably we didn't anticipate is that the parcels, that a developer would assemble parcels to create a larger structure. So at that time, these parcels were in 2 or 3 different ownerships. And so if that had gone through and a development in that scenario would have not been or felt as massive. But these developers were successful in assembling the properties, and that's why the building is big.
I'm not sure why people wouldn't know that people could purchase multiple properties, or that could be accomplished.
They know that, but those patterns have been established for
That wasn't
80
something
years.
that was done, really.
It wasn't something that people anticipated. But that's with any type of change to an ordinance, you try to anticipate as much as you can. But the market goes in different ways. People make different decisions, and so this is our opportunity to try to fix things that may be broken.
When is that building going up then, 413 East Huron?
From what we know right now, they are proceeding with construction drawings. We have them in our office, so my guess is within the next few months we'll start to see excavation on the site.
And what is that going to be?
It's going to be a residential, multiple family residential with retail on the first floor.
Isn't that what we talk about?
We did. We talked about mixing so that at the street level there was activity, retail, something other than office space or banks or whatever. And then housing downtown. That's really been the prime focus since 2005 when Kelthorpe was here, is to try to bring more people to live in downtown, not just to visit, but to live.
So with this, if we're just talking about that specific site, if there's a rezoning that happens for that site, is it because it's really that block from State to Division
Correct.
that borders on a residential neighborhood, right? Of the almost the entire length of the downtown portion of Huron Street.
And there's one additional parcel just to the west, right next to City Hall, that fronts on Ann Street.
Right.
Right, yes, okay. So is that now going to apply to that block and that other parcel, or are we talking about this piece that it's going to apply to?
Right now, we don't know.
Okay.
We are asking for feedback on the one remaining vacant parcel in that block, which is owned by the Dahlman family.
Okay.
It's adjacent to Campus Inn and used as a surface parking lot.
Okay,
The other parcels are pretty largely developed already, unlikely to redevelop.
sure.
But
again,
it's
we-
But it's
possible.
not going to impact what's been approved, which is 413
It
East
might.
Huron.
It might. We could rezone those properties, and it has no practical impact on the new development, except that it makes redevelopment in the future more difficult, or changes more difficult, because the zoning then would be considered non-conforming.
Which the owner might take into consideration now, or no?
The owner
Of 413
No, 'cause
East Huron.
their project has been approved.
Their
Their-
project's been
all right.
approved. They have the authority within 3 years to move forward with their project.
Okay.
And I guess where I'm going with my question is we've always fought for many years the idea of spot zoning. I'm just making,
Yes.
just for my own, we're not heading back into a spot zoning here, so I guess what my question is, or are we?
We don't know.
Okay.
What we're doing this week and next is we've hired EMP Associates, a local consulting firm, to help us work through the options. So they've identified a couple of options that could happen either to a individual parcel or the entire block front, or the overlaying zoning, which we call character areas.
Right.
So it's possible that as a result of this, we'll see an interest in having massing requirements that would require more slender towers, in which case it might apply to that whole character area, not just an individual site.
Okay. All right.
Wendy Rampson, Planning Manager for the City of Ann Arbor. Damian Farrell, Local Architect with Damian Farrell Design Group. Damian?
I'm not familiar with the MP myself. They're in Ann Arbor based?
They are.
They are, okay.
It's a two-person
Okay.
firm, planners, both graduates of the University of Michigan.
Okay.
They most recently did the Shape Ypsilanti planning effort, which actually is on the tail end of that process.
Okay. And have they done, what other places have they worked in?
They've worked throughout Michigan,
Oh, they have. They've
providing geographic information
Okay.
for communities, and also these types of planning engagement in smaller communities.
Okay. I guess I'm asking that question because it struck me for the national experts, if you will, that we brought in, and nothing against them. I don't know them, and so I'm just asking the question publicly here. This is a very tenuous time, if you will. I think there's a fair amount of raw flesh out there right now about this whole process, and I think especially from a lot of the people who really gave a tremendous amount of time and effort in the beginning, there are some thoughts out there that what did we really do all of this for? and you know, I've been saying all along, planning is an iterative process. There's no
Yes.
doubt about it. You can't come up with a plan and say we're done.
Exactly.
Which is what happened before. We did something in the 70s and we lived with it for a long time with changes, minor changes. So I understand that, but I think there's some fundamental stuff here that's pretty big. That to me is like a little bit of your question, Lucian. What were we pretending not to understand when we did this just 5, 6, 7 years ago, and we were so exhaustive, and now all of a sudden we're dealing with this, and I may be wrong that it seems to have come out of one project that has driven this. That's my perception, and so I do, and a lot of other people, a lot of people in my profession. This is not a good thing, in my opinion, in some sense.
Let me try. The other piece, when council asked for planning commission to do this evaluation, they kept it very narrow.
Okay.
They said there are 3 sites that border residential that we want you to look at, and we're looking at those 3 sites. They also said this system of premiums, which is the way that we try to incentivize development, is we offer a bonus floor area if a developer does certain things, like add residential or do lead development.
Right.
So council asked us to look at that premium system to make sure it was netting what we wanted. So we have a fairly confined scope of what we are looking at.
Okay.
And we're not looking at rezoning the entire area. We're not looking at throwing out the pieces that we so intricately put together.
Okay.
So if that reassures you, but it still will potentially change what perhaps people thought might happen on Huron.
Yeah.
Does this have anything to do with the previous controversy over, I think, was it the Germantown area, with housing and rentals and buildings?
Not directly, because that is in a residential zone, and as
It's considered outside of
it is
downtown.
outside of the downtown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though some people would,
Right.
think of it as a downtown, it actually is zone residential, and it's outside of that
It's
downtown
even
boundary.
outside the D2
Yeah.
ring zone or fringe zone. So
Right.
yeah, it is very different.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
one of the sites that we're looking at has a side that backs up to that neighborhood, and that's the site that the DTE building is on at William and Main.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the 3 sites we're looking at to see whether the density that's proposed for that building is appropriate, given, in that case, there's an alley, but it's right next to the residential neighborhood. Is that appropriate, or should that be tempered?
Even though it's there already?
The DTE building?
Yeah.
Yes, but it's there in a much smaller setting than what it could be. It could be potentially 180 feet tall.
Wow. Can you
Based
imagine?
on the zoning.
And if you have those historic houses that are next to
God, I'd
that.
love to live on the top of a 180
Yes,
foot building.
have a
Man,
great view.
Views would just be wonderful.